Radio IKIM Inspirasi Infora Islami. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good afternoon to the dear listeners of IKIM FM. Welcome to this special interview. My name is Patricia Afrina. I'm your host for today. On the 7th of October 2023, Hamas, the Palestinian resistance movement, executed a daring attack on Israel, resulting in the loss of hundreds of Israeli soldiers' lives and the abduction of tens of others. In retaliation, the Israeli government launched airstrikes on Gaza. Unfortunately, these airstrikes resulted in the tragic loss of hundreds of innocent Palestinian lives, including children and women. To provide a deeper insight into the current situation, we have with us today Professor Dr. Muhammad Nazari Ismail, Director of Hashim Sani Center for Palestine Studies, University of Malaya. Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alhamdulillah, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And the Israel-Palestine conflict is far from what some may simplistically label as a mere beef between two countries. This long-standing conflict is deeply rooted in history and encompasses in a multifaceted and intricate nature. On one side, there's Israel, which has one of the strongest militaries in the world, while on the opposing side, we have Hamas, a Palestine militant organization in control of the Gaza Strip. It's interesting to note that some people might believe that this situation could have been avoided if Hamas hadn't provoked Israel initially. To clarify this perspective, Prof, could we begin by discussing the historical background that led us to where we are today?
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, you are indeed very right that in order to really understand what is happening in Palestine now, you have to go back to into history, into the origin of the whole thing. And in actuality, the origin of the whole thing is actually, it was in Europe. Believe it or not, it didn't start in the Middle East, it started in Europe. It was the origin of the problem was the racism that existed in Europe, where European Christians basically were discriminating against Jews over there for hundreds of years. They took many forms. They even pogroms, for example, killings of Jews, not allowing them to participate in certain economic activities. They were not allowed to have industries, farms, etc. So there were periodic attacks on Jewish populations, resulting in killings of many Jews. So over hundreds of years, the Jews were being persecuted, and some of the Europeans actually had in their mind that they want to get rid of the Jews from Europe. The Jews in return, some of them tried to assimilate. They tried to assimilate and become Europeans. They abandoned their culture, their religion, assume European names, and they were called Reform Jews. But unfortunately for them, the Europeans refused to accept them. So what happened was some of the secular Jews, led by a philosopher, writer, Theodor Herzl, he started a movement called Zionism, which basically said that Jews are never going to be accepted by the Europeans, and that they have to have a place of their own, a homeland for themselves. And during that time, they had no plan to go to Palestine. They just wanted a place for themselves. They were even discussing about going to South America. I think some even mentioned Africa. But because of some historical ties that they have with Palestine, then some of them mentioned that perhaps we should go back to Palestine and create a homeland for ourselves over there. This was in the 19th century, 1870s, 1875 to be precise. So this has a long history all the way back in Europe. So you have a combination of some secular Jews who were disappointed and wanted to create their own place, and you have also these Europeans who also wanted to get rid of them, and also had an agenda to create a problem in the Muslim world. But other Jews, especially religious Jews at that time, they were not interested to go anywhere. Their religious teaching said that what they need to do was to be a good citizen of the place where they were staying, and then later on, God will help them to achieve salvation and have a peaceful situation. So they were leaving everything to God. But these secular Jews who actually didn't believe in the teaching of religion, didn't want to follow that. They were not patient enough, and they said that let's go and create and establish our own homeland in Palestine. As I said, this is just one of the alternative. They were even they had not. In other words, they were when they were thinking about places like in Africa and South America. That proves that there was no religious reason for them to go back to Palestine. But then they decided to do that, and they were encouraged by the British Empire at that time, who also wanted to create problem for them in the Muslim world. Anyway, so the problem they faced at that time was Palestine was actually already populated. It's already populated, as we know. That place has been a cradle of civilization for thousands of years. So there were people living there, including Jews who were living peacefully among the Muslims, Palestinian Arabs at that time. And so, in order to create this interest among other Jews to go and migrate to this place, they create this. Created this slogan, the false slogan called "Land without people for people without land," which is actually a lie, because that place had people. The Palestinians who live in there, they had civilization over there for thousands of years.
Even before they came.
Even before the secular Jews came. Anyway, they came anyway. They came to the place and with a plan from the very beginning that they are going to establish a homeland for Jews there. And as I said, the problem was they were Palestinians there. So they then decided that the plan is to get rid of the Palestinians. So there was a conscious plan to go there, not only to colonize the land, but also to expel the Palestinians. That is why many scholars of Palestine, including Jewish scholars, one of them who's very famous, his name is Professor Ilan Pape. He wrote a book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. And he said that what the Zionist project over there was a settler colonial project. It's a colonization of land that belonged to other people. At the same time, it's a settler colonial project because it necessitates getting rid of the native population. So the people who come over there, they want to settle there and they want to get rid so that it becomes exclusively a land for Jews, no place for Palestinians. So they then embark on the plan from the very beginning that they have to encourage the Palestinians, sort of, in the comments, encourage. And what happened was they formed paramilitary groups which attacked Palestinian villages. Okay. In the beginning, they were actually assisted by the British, who was at that time the colonial power of the place after the fall of the Ottoman Empire. As you know, 1917, the Ottoman Empire collapsed and the British took over, and they then facilitated this plan because among the British cabinet members, they were also Zionists. They were people they were Christian Zionists, though they were not Jewish. They were Christian Zionists. There was prior to that, I must also mention there were Christians who believe in this religious belief that not all Christian, but some of the Christian at that time, that the Messiah will come and salvation will then happen only when all the Jews are gathered in Palestine. So the end of time will come and then everything will be nice. Messiah will only come when the Jews are all gathered in Palestine. The Messiah will come, something like what Muslims believe to be Imam Mahdi. So these people, this Messiah will then convert all the Jews to Christianity, and then you have the end of time and salvation, and then everybody goes to heaven. So this is what the Christian Zionists believed. So these people were also in the British government, and they then saw that this the plan by the Zionist Jews to create a homeland for themselves jive nicely with their Christian Zionist ideology. And so they facilitated the whole process. And that is why they actually participated in the expulsion of Palestinians from their land. For example, one of the things they did was, the Zionists did was, they look at the land registry of Palestine, and then they will identify the place where they want to take over.
Okay.
And then they go to the land registry, which was at that time, before that it was under the Ottoman Empire. So the land registry could be in Istanbul somewhere. And the land were divided by the Ottoman elites among themselves.
All right.
Okay, some of these landowners, they were absentee landlords. They were not staying there. The Palestinian families were living there. But according to the land registry, it belongs to somebody in Damascus, for example. They were not living there, but it belongs to them on paper. So we go to the guy, to the landlord, and say that I want to buy this land from you. And then this guy said, this land is just on paper. I have no intention to go and live there. But if you want to give me money, I will accept the money. And then the Zionists will then go over there and then tell the Palestinian farmers, sorry, you are staying on my land. And the Palestinian farmers will say, what do you mean? We have been here for hundreds of years. My grandfathers, my great-grandfathers have been staying there, farming this land. And then they will show the paper and say, look, this paper shows that this land belongs to me. I bought this from somebody. The Palestinians didn't know that, because they were staying there without official paper, because they had been there for hundreds of years, because they were under the Ottoman Empire. But so they refused to move. Many of them refused. And that's when the British will come together with the Jews and at gunpoint will expel the Palestinians from their land. If they refuse, they will be shot. So many Palestinians lost their land because of that. So you can see now the expulsion of Palestinians started way before World War II, way before the Holocaust. So the Zionist agenda and implementation of the agenda started way before. And then during the World War II, that gave them the excuse, because when Hitler and the Nazis killed so many Jews, that give that impetus. The argument becomes stronger that Jews are not safe in Europe, and the only place for them to be safe is to go to Palestine. So then the number of immigrants from Europe, European immigrants, Jewish immigrants, all increased. And during that time, they also increased their atrocities toward the Palestinians. There were massacres of Palestinian villagers. The most famous is the Deir Yassin massacre, where hundreds of Palestinians were killed, and they all and then they will leave some they will leave some who will be allowed to live, in other words, not killed. And this Palestinian will then encouraged to go to the next village and tell the other Palestinians that if they want to be safe and remain alive, they must leave their homes and leave their villages. So to create fear among the Palestinians, they burn the houses and kill women and children. According to some historians, like Vanny Morris, they say even there were rapes also of Palestinian women. And the Palestinian villagers then had to leave, and they left in droves. And they thought it was only going to be a temporary situation to be safe. So almost maybe around 750,000, according to some historians, about 750,000 Palestinians left their villages in order to be safe. And of course, the Zionists then took over their lands, took over their villages, took over their houses. And at the same time, they then encouraged Jews from other places, not only from Europe, but also from the Middle East, to come to Palestine. Now, there is another report by also Jews, a group of Jews called True Torah. They did a study, and they say that the Zionists went to places in Middle East where there were significant number of Jewish populations, because they were living safely in Muslim land, because Muslims had no quarrel with Jews as long as they remain peaceful. So they were having good relations. So what the Zionists wanted was they wanted these Jews to also move to Palestine. So they um, did some violence, without people knowing, by bombing the synagogues, the Jewish synagogues, and blaming on the Arabs. They say to the Jews, your synagogues are being burned and bombed by the Arabs because they hate you. So if you want to be safe, you better move over to Palestine. And so these people then say, if we move, where are we going to go? We don't have places over there in Palestine. Don't worry, there are houses for you waiting, houses that belong to Palestinians who had left. You don't have to bring anything. There are furnitures there also.
So everything is prepared.
Everything is prepared for them. So they then move over and went to. Many of them moved to Palestine. This create more animosity among Arabs because they said all the Jews are victimizing the Palestinians, and this was 1948 onwards, right? But the thing is, back to the question of the conflict. So if you go back, you can see now the massacre started long before World War II, and also immediately before the formation of the State of Israel in 1948. There were massacres. Of course, the Palestinians fought back. They actually fought back even before that. During the British, they fought back against colonial power. There were armed uprising by the Arabs because they were very proud people. They didn't want to be colonized, and they fought. But of course, because the British were very powerful, they lost the fight. In other words, many of them got killed. One of them, very famous one, his name is Sheikh Izzuddin al-Qassam. The Hamas military wing is called Qassam Brigade. It's named after Sheikh Izzuddin al-Qassam. And this guy, this Arab Palestinian, was actually of Syrian origin. He was the one who led the Palestinian uprising against the British. He was killed anyway. So it's a long story now. I'm saying that. So if you go back, what happened is that the Palestinians were robbed of their land with the help of the British. People who came over from Europe to colonize and then to expel them, and not only that, the Zionists, as I said, had a plan to completely control Palestinian land all the way to the West Bank from the very beginning. You see? So that is why in 1967 they went to conquer more Palestinian land. 1967, which now is called the West Bank.
The West Bank.
Yeah, and then which is part of their original plan, right? To cut the story short, is that the Palestinians continued to fight against this attempt to eliminate them from their own land, and that is why you have this so-called conflict until now. This so-called war is ongoing because the Palestinians do not want to give up. They don't want to give up. They have got a very strong sense of self-identity. They are proud people who will never give up. They will never allow people to come over and take over their land. And they will fight no matter what. Even though it looks like a lost cause, but not according to them. In their eyes, they will win one day. And that is why you saw what the Hamas did. Prior, as I said, the process of taking away Palestinian lands started way before World War II and ongoing until today. In the West Bank, for example, the settlers have gone over and confiscate Palestinian lands. In East Jerusalem, they have kicked out Palestinians from their homes, right? They have been killing Palestinians. Recently, the killings have increased because they have the government of Israel now is controlled by right-wing extremists who are impatient in the sense that they want to get rid of Palestine as soon as possible. So in recent months, the number of Palestinians who have been killed in the hundreds already, and the atrocities committed against Palestinians have increased. And that's the reason why recently Hamas decided that they have got to increase their operations to protect the Palestinians and to deter the Zionists, the Israelis, from their violence against the Palestinians, and that was the reason. That was the background to the recent raid by the Hamas military wing.
And I would like to touch again that you mentioned just now about that they are actually when people think about Jews, they would think that there's only one type of Jew. So actually, when you explain to it, they actually the secular Jews and also the religious Jews.
Okay.
So could you elaborate a bit on how can individuals identify themselves as Jewish without aligning themselves with the Zionist ideology and vice versa?
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, Jews, many Jews, thousands of Jews can explain to us that they have got nothing to do with Zionism. Thousands of Jews now. As I said, even Zionism is a new phenomenon which started only in the late 19th century. Prior to that, Jewish history has got thousands of years. And they why didn't they embark in the project of colonizing or taking over Palestine? Why didn't they do that before this, right? Because it wasn't part of the Jewish religion anyway. So Jews were scattered all over the world, and they were living peacefully. They had no interest. According to some religious Jews, they have no tie whatsoever. As the Jews have no homeland as far as they are concerned. This concept of the homeland of the Jews was only created by the Zionists, and who were not religious anyway. They consider themselves Jews because of their mother was a Jew. That's all. But they don't practice the Jewish culture. So there are many Jews who still believe that there is no such thing as a homeland for the Jews. And they include religious as well as secular Jews. So those who do not believe in the homeland of Jews are not only religious Jews. Now you have religious Jews and secular Jews on both sides. Some are Zionists, right? Some are anti-Zionists. So if you go to New York, for example, you will find also in the UK very strong anti-Zionist Jews who will demonstrate and protest against Israel. If they hear of Netanyahu going to New York, for example, they will organize protests against. You see them wearing traditional Jewish dress, and they are very religious, and they are also found in Europe as well. So among the secular, there are also those who basically do not believe in, because they believe in equality for people. They are against racism, and they say they study what happened in Palestine. As far as they are concerned, what is happening in Palestine is racism and apartheid, because you have Palestinians who are being violated. Their human rights are being violated simply because they are Palestinians. Their lands are confiscated because they are Palestinian to be given to Jews. And you have a military law in the West Bank, which applies only to Palestinians. Okay, if you are Palestinian, you cannot move freely. You have to move in certain roads which have got hundreds of checkpoints, whereas the Jews can move on highways in the West Bank. So for them, this is basically apartheid. So many secular Jews hate apartheid. They especially in America now, there are thousands of Jews say, no, this has got nothing to do with us. We believe in equality, and therefore we are against that. So they are Jews. Okay, so this is not the issue of what is happening in Palestine. It's not the issue of Jews against Muslims. This is not. This is actually an issue of apartheid, violation of human rights by some people against another people simply because of race. So it is a mistake to say that this is a religious fight of the Jews against Muslims. This is not. So I think Malaysians must be educated on this. Many of them do not understand it. They think it's actually the religious war between Jews and Muslims. No, because as I said, many Jews are against Israel. I know. I have personal friends who are completely against Israel. And they insist that it's got nothing to do with Jewishness. So furthermore, as I said just now, many of the earlier leaders of Zionism do not believe in the Bible. They do not believe in the holy books of the Jews. They're secular. Even now, Benjamin Netanyahu is not religious. He is a secular, but he will use religious arguments. So he said, I believe this land I do not believe in God.
Mhm.
He doesn't believe in God, but he says God reserves this land only for the Jews. This is a very strange kind of principle. So to answer back your question is
Mhm.
that uh, there are thousands of Jews who are very active. There is an organization, for example, Jewish Voice for Peace. If you can Google it, you come across a very active group of Jews in America who are completely against Israel, who say that what is happening over there is crimes against humanity, and who say that the only way to solve this problem is to give equal rights to Palestinians. These are who say this. These are Jews, uh, and I said they have got a large membership, Jewish Voice for Peace. So to say that the Jews are completely behind Israel is not wrong. It's not right.
It's not.
Actually, there are non-Jews who are Zionists. If you
Oh.
believe in the homeland for Jews only, then you are Zionist. And I said just now, one of them are the Christian Zionists.
Christians.
They are Christians. They are not Jews.
Okay.
So these are Zionists but Christians.
Mhm.
You also have Arabs who are Zionists who believe that this land belongs to the Jews. So if you believe this land belongs only to the Jews,
You're
then you are
Zionist.
Zionist. You can be a Muslim and also a Zionist if you believe the land belongs. If you now, for example, you have a policy where the Palestinians should move out and let the Jews
Live there.
live there
Uh-huh.
in the state of Palestine. So let Israel become a normal country, normalize relation with Israel, respect Israel despite what they are doing to the Palestinians. Then you deserve to be called Zionist, even though you are a Muslim. If you believe that, this land, the Palestinian land, belongs to the Jews, if you believe that. This is strange, right? Some
Yeah.
Arabs and some Muslims say this land belongs to the Jews, whereas some Jews or many thousands of Jews say no, this land belongs to people who stay there, and originally they were Palestinians. They are, as I said, the scholar Ilan Pape, he is a Jew. He wrote, he did his PhD at Oxford University and studied the history of Palestine. That was when he found out that Israel was formed through ethnic cleansing. That's why he wrote the book. And he says the Palestinians must be given back their rights, and those who are refugees must be allowed to return to their land, to wherever they come from, which village they come from. They should be allowed to return back to their villages, right, to their homeland, basically. And he's a Jew, and he said there is no such thing as homeland for the Jews. This land actually belonged to Palestinians, and they should be given back their right, and they should be given back their land. And as I said, he is a Jew.
And just now, Prof, when you mentioned Benjamin Netanyahu, I would like to take an excerpt from a statement from Benjamin Netanyahu himself through Application Acts on October 10, 2023. He said, Israel is at war. We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us in the most brutal and savage way. But though Israel didn't start this war, Israel will finish it. Once the Jewish people were stateless, once the Jewish people were defenseless, no longer. And Prof, if we were to take this statement literally, if they were initially really defenseless, how did they amass such power and influence that ultimately becoming one of the most politically influential and military strong countries in the world?
Okay, there's a lot of question inside that question. Right? Anyway, so we go back to this statement saying that they were stateless, and then they were Jews living in Europe. The state belongs to the place where they stayed, so they were British Jews, right? So they were all European Jews, and you have American Jews. So just like any other people who stay in America, you are Chinese in America. The American Chinese, America is their country. So as I said, there's not many Jews who stay in Europe and Britain and America. They say no, our country is America. Our country is Britain, and they are safe over there. Right? But this statement, stateless, is actually if you insist that there must be a land only for the Jews, then you will say you insist on this stateless thing, right? And then they say they didn't start the war. That is a lie again, because they were the one who came from Europe to Palestine and then committed massacres on the Palestinians. So you have to go back to history to know how did it start. You cannot simply go only a couple of weeks ago to say that the war started when Hamas carried out the operation. The whole thing started, as I said, in the early, even before World War II, and the massacres were committed by the Jewish paramilitary gangs, headed by um, his name is I can't remember. Some of they end up becoming prime ministers of Israel anyway. So what happened was these people were military people. They were military people, paramilitary groups, paramilitary leaders of paramilitary groups, and they committed massacres, as I said. So when Benjamin Netanyahu said that we didn't start this war, he is trying to cover this truth that actually there were massacres that took place by Jews, by Zionist Jews on the Palestinian before. Now you ask, why are they so powerful now? That's another issue. How did they become so powerful? Number one, we must remember that this was a project that was supported by the West. The West, who colonized many countries, right? They even colonized our own country, Malaysia.
Yeah.
They colonized China, for example, before, right? The French colonized parts of Africa, as well as even in Asia. Cambodia, I think, was part of the British, the French colonial colony. Right? It was a French colony. So the Europeans, they were colonizing everywhere, and they also wanted to continue their influence, make sure their influence in the Arab world remains strong. So that was their project to colonize indirectly through the Jews, right? Through the Jews, they used the Jews to go there and set up this place called Israel in historic Palestine, and then they supported this military state by giving Israel all kind of assistance, financial assistance. America also provide the same thing. But you must also understand that many of these Zionists are also engaged in industries that give them a lot of financial power. The financial industry of the world many of them are controlled by Zionists. Some people may say controlled by Jews. This is very very careful with that statement, because the financial industry is actually controlled by people of all kind of races now. Even Muslims are now engaged in the riba industry. They own money, they own shares in Citibank, for example. So to say that it's only controlled by Jews is also not true. But Zionists, people who it's true that many of them have got control over the media industry as well as the financial industry, and this financial industry will contribute a lot of money to the state of Israel. If, for example, very rich people in America, they will contribute to funds that would then be sent to Israel, and it will be tax exempt. In other words, they don't have to pay tax to the American government. If you contribute to a fund that helps Israel, then that will be deducted from your tax payment. So of course, rather than pay tax to America, they would send the money over. So we are talking about billions being sent to Israel. That is the reason why Israel can finance itself. It's actually a military state. It's very expensive to maintain that state, because you need a lot of military hardware, and also have to pay soldiers allowances and so on. Military operations, they need a lot of money, and this money comes from the West, as I said, from very rich Zionists all over the world, who will send money. Last time they had called the Jewish National Fund. And this money was also used to also buy up land for Palestinians, sometimes by force. as I mentioned, the history of what happened,
Yeah.
right, just now. So this financial power give them the ability to accumulate military power. And so uh, the nature of the financial industry, a big topic on its own, where banks can create money from thin air, right? And then lend to people and then earn profit through interest. That's the reason why the banking industry is very big, and many Zionists are actually involved in this industry. That's the reason why they are able to finance the propaganda war for Israel. For example, one of the richest lobby groups in America is called the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC. This is the most influential lobby group in the US. It's committed 100% to lobbying for Israel. So this is the most, as I said, powerful. So if you are a politician in America who do not support 100%, you don't support Israel 100%, then the lobby group, the AEPIC, will support somebody else to defeat you who is 100% behind Israel. For example, now I can mention some names. Bernie Sanders, he's a Jew. He's actually a Jew, a socialist Jew who believes in equality, and he spent some time in the kibbutz in what is called Israel now. When he was young, so he saw the injustice towards the Palestinian, and he got this illusion, and he left, and he went back to America, and he became a politician, and he became very popular, and actually was the leading Democratic presidential candidate during the last election. But what happened was the AIPAC, American Israel Public Affairs Committee, the lobby group, were worried about if this guy wins, then the support for America from America to Israel will be reduced. So what they did was they funded the alternative candidate, who is Joe Biden. Joe Biden was trailing badly during the early stage of the election. Joe Biden, as you can see now, is not a very impressive president of America. How did he win? He was funded by the AIPAC. Bernie Sanders was more impressive, but because of the propaganda, because of the media war against Bernie Sanders, they say the Democratic Party is not going to win the election. He's not electable as a president. So what happened was Joe Biden became president. Even now, you can see there's another person who is trying to become president. Her name is Nikki Haley. She is more Israeli than Israel. He's a supporter of Israel more than the Israelis themselves. Because some Israelis who stay in Israel actually criticize the settlers for taking lands from the Palestinians. They insist that Palestinians should have their own state. Not Nikki Haley, who is an American. She's not even a white. She has got, as you know, Indian blood. But she is more Israeli than the Israelis. Why is she like that? Because she wants financial support from the AIPAC. She thinks that by being super Israeli, right, super Zionist, then she'll get the money, and hopefully she thinks she can win the election and become president. So basically money, and then the money can be used for media campaigns, and that's the reason why, as I said, Israel is very influential and receive a lot of support from Western powers.
And going back, when you mentioned just now that this conflict can traces its root back to even before the World War II, and up until now, it seems like the conflict seems to persist. So why is there seemingly no end to this conflict? And do you anticipate the outcome of this particular conflict will differ from the previous one?
Okay. Now, the answer to that question is very simple. If the Palestinians behave like the indigenous people of Australia or the indigenous people of America, as you know, Australia was originally inhabited by the indigenous people of who were dark skinned. No, but what happened was Europeans came to Australia, right? And took over the country. And the indigenous people, Aborigines, didn't fight back. Basically, they lost the country to Europeans. Similar thing happened in New Zealand as well as in America. Now, if the Palestinians are like the indigenous people of Australia and America, then there will be no conflict. Just what is happening in Australia. There's no conflict in Australia, and also no war between the indigenous people and Americans in America, and no war among the Maoris between the Maoris and the Europeans who are controlling New Zealand now. But the Palestinians are not like that. They are not like that, and one of the factor is possibly their religion, which says that it is not you are shirking your religious responsibility if you allow other people to come to your country, colonize it, take your country away and kick you out. That is not to abandon the fight against injustice. Fighting against injustice, especially injustice where they want to eliminate your community, your Muslim community, is jihad. So they believe in that. So that gives them the strength. And that's the reason why the conflict continues, because the West continues to support the Zionist settler colonial project, right? This continues to support, regardless of what they are doing to Palestinians, right? Even though these people are killing Palestinians, confiscating their lands, expelling them, etc., etc., all this injustice, apartheid policies, but the West continues to turn a blind eye to these atrocities. Continue, and the Palestinians say, "No way, we are never going to give up our fight for justice." So the factor is continuous injustice and continuous fight against injustice. So if you want to end it, you have to end the injustice, right? You end the injustice, then there is no more fight. So why is it continuing? Because you have to put the blame on those perpetrators of injustice and the supporters of the injustice. They are the one who are the main factors behind these continuing conflicts in Palestine, right? So actually, they should be ashamed by what is happening, because they are the one who are making it unending. They are the ones by supporting the apartheid policies of the current Israeli government. Yeah.
And with that being said, Prof, we will wrap up this first part of this interview. Thank you for your valuable insights on the situation, and also a special thank you to our dear listeners for tuning in. We hope that this discussion will prove beneficial to those who have been following us, whether through radio or even through Facebook. Once more, thank you, Doctor, for joining us. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
And dear listeners, for those who miss any part of today's show, you can watch the replay on our Facebook page IKIM FM. Stay tuned and keep listening to IKIM FM, Inspirasi Infora Islami.